It's really an honor to get to be here today. Thanks so much for having me. I haven't been to Bozeman in a while. I took my first professional class here like 20 years ago. I got to come back and teach that same course back in 2016. So these mountains kind of hold a really special place for me and kind of some very formative moments in my professional development. So as Alex reached out to me about coming over here and talking, and he was talking about the theme of turning points, immediately all these events start to roll through my brain, right? I'm thinking about my first job as an avalanche forecaster at Rose, and I'm thinking about big near misses or accidents and involvements. I'm thinking about people that affected me, Mike Ferrari, Paulette Snyder, Tom Carter, and these folks that poured into me. And I love the notion that we are these culminations of all these events, these people, these places. Last fall, I was talking to Kevin, one of the avalanche forecasters from the Payette, and he was kind of laughing with me, maybe at me, that my talk there was about crayons, and the previous talk he had seen me give was about hamburgers. And apparently this says that my brain is insanely simple. And this whole avalanche thing is really, really complex. And maybe like Jeff was doing with his corn piles and angles of repose, I'm constantly trying to grab something in my life that helps me wrap my head around this crazy avalanche phenomena that we all wrestle with on a daily basis. And so as Mark alluded to, so today I'm going to talk about fishing. I mean, we are in Montana after all, when in Rome, but not just any fishing. I'm going to talk about fly fishing for steelhead. And over the past couple years, I've picked up this totally random new sport in my 40s, and it's sort of turned on its head how I think about snow, weather, and avalanches. It's refined how I think about it, it's reinforced some things, and it's totally reshaped others. Now, I gotta be honest, this is kind of an intimidating place to talk about fly fishing. There's without a doubt at least 24 fly fishing guides in the audience that can easily dissect my cast from a couple photos. But anyway, here we go. So this whole story starts with my wife. See, I grew up hunting and fishing in the woods of South Alabama. Now, there is nothing less confidence-inspiring you can say as an avalanche forecaster than you are from Alabama, all right? But I grew up hunting and fishing with my dad and granddad down there in these woods, but those parts of my life had largely gone away. For decades, I hadn't been out in the woods hunting. I hadn't cast a fly rod. And then back in 2022, for Christmas, my wife gives me this brand new two-handed fly rod, a spey rod. And she has these great ideas, dreams, that I'm gonna walk down to the Cowlitz River that flows about 100 yards from our home there in Packwood. And I'm gonna come back with fresh salmon and steelhead for dinner every night, and it's gonna be great. And if you talk to her about it now, she will tell you that she has had a terrible return on her investment. That these dreams of me bringing home dinner have basically come unfulfilled, and the few salmon and steelhead dinners we have had, while delicious, are the most overpriced meals of our lives. But my journey in becoming a steelhead angler has really caused me to rethink several things about my life as an avalanche forecaster. It's caused me to rethink how I look at education and expectations and how we sometimes match those things and maybe others don't. It's caused me to re-examine how we behave as avalanche professionals to our colleagues, to our friends, to new people within our industry, and to the public. And it's really caused me to wrestle with how do I learn, grow, and develop in this environment where I get nearly no feedback. Some of you may know what steelhead are, others of you may not, and you're wondering why anybody would want to catch one of these fish. You're probably much more familiar with their close cousin, the Pacific salmon. See, like salmon, these are fish that are born in the rivers. Indeed, these are simply just rainbow trout, just like you have down here in the Gallatin River. The only difference with these rainbows is they have access to the ocean. So some of them decide they're going to go grow up out in the ocean, and they swim out, and they spend anywhere from 6 months to 3 years swimming around the North Pacific, getting really big. Then they come back to their natal waters where they spawn. But unlike salmon, they don't die. Instead, they can migrate back down to the ocean, and they can make this trip 2, 3, even 4 times in their life cycles. Because of that, they get really big. On my river there, the Cowlitz, a typical winter steelhead is 2.5 to 3 feet long. It weighs 12 to 20 pounds on average. These are pretty big fish. And they're notoriously hard to catch. And if you do manage to hook one, good luck landing it. They are known for screaming runs where the line is ripping off your fly reel, for their huge aerial acrobatics where they're cartwheeling down the river. It's often described like being hit by a lightning bolt when they take the fly. Because of the energy that runs up the fly line, through the rod, and into your arm is like being struck by lightning. It's no wonder that they named these things a fish of 1,000 casts. As I delved into this new sport in my 40s, I started to see immediately the intersection of science, art, and luck in this new thing of steelheading. When I was a brand new ski area forecaster at Mount Rose, and that's actually 20-something-year-old Dallas there, Paul Phillipson, who was like a 30-year veteran patroller at Mount Rose, hung a sign right above my avalanche forecasting bulletin board. And it said, avalanche forecasting is 5% science, 20% art, and 75% luck. And for the last 20 years, I've been thinking about that sign that Paul hung above my avalanche forecast. So here I am, 4 years ago, brand new fly rod in hand, and I am gonna go catch a fish. I began to just dredge the internet for anything, forums, blog posts, books, classes, YouTube videos that can teach me to cast, that can help me figure out how to do this thing. And most of these things are talking to me about entomology and hatch charts and flow diagrams and how we need to take meticulous records of flow rates and water temperature and visibility and all these weather factors. And I'm like, this is a hobby, right? And I'm immediately transported back to those countless level 1 avalanche classes that I've taught, where I've told the students, read the forecast every single day. Track the season's snowpack. Read the observations. Pay attention to all the weather stations. With some sort of idea that they want to eat, breathe, and live snow just like I do on a daily basis. And it began to really make me question, is catching a steelhead a reasonable expectation with the amount of time that I have to devote to this thing? See, I began to really wonder, if I'm only going to fish a handful of days a year, can I catch one of these fish? I was talking to Kelly McNeil about this at the Wallowa Avalanche Center recently. And Kelly brought up to me this paper that she presented at ISSW back in Bend. And she was looking at area level 1 students and how many days they recreate in the mountains each winter. And for non-motorized users, she found that 2/3 of these respondents recreate 10 days or less a year. 10. 90% recreate 20 days or less a year. Interestingly, the motorized crowd has a fully inverse relationship to this, but that's for another talk for Kelly to give. But I began to wonder, is a 3-day class in less than 10 days on the snow each season enough to safely go ride powder and avalanche terrain? Is it enough experience to be able to tick off a big line? Or do maybe we have a misalignment with how we show our students what we do and the level of expectations that they may be able to have? See, a lot of people think we have this silver bullet, some magic question that we get to go ask the snowpack that lets us do the rad. But really, we know that's not the case at all. We know most of our jobs are actually not skiing powder, not riding through snow, not triggering avalanches. Most of our jobs is staring at weather station tables, tallying snowpack observations, and planning to go to the field. See, for us, it's not magic, it's process. It's not mystery, it's skill. We know the countless hours that we've spent pouring into this to refine our craft to be able to do the thing that we do every single day. This has caused me to really change how I talk to students and how I present what I do as my job. That I try to not make it the flashy part of my job of, oh, I'm out every day in the mountains getting to go play in the snow and I get to ski all the time and it's really fun. But instead, I really try to highlight the amount of time and effort that we spend, that I would say way more than half my job is spent behind a computer screen, not in the snowpack. That when I'm talking to them about their expectations, I'm like, if you want to do the thing, catch the steelhead, here's the investment that you may have to make to be able to do that safely, or you need to recognize that it's just pure luck. This brings me to my second point. It's okay to be new. In fact, it's a good thing. Last fall, I had the opportunity to take a really long drive with a newer avalanche professional. And as we're driving, they're talking to me about how insecure they feel in their job, how when they're talking to their colleagues, they feel like they don't know as much as these people, that they often feel like maybe they didn't earn their spot and that they are just massively overwhelmed. Jeff brought it up earlier. He talked about imposter syndrome. And I know that many of us in this room feel that way. And that can be very isolating. It can be very damaging. It can be really tricky to deal with. This conversation made me, kind of came back to me this past winter. I was actually on the north side of Mount St. Helens fishing with a buddy of mine named Cullen. See, Cullen is a fly fishing guide in Alaska during the summers. And as we're walking through the dark northwest woods on our way to the first hole, he exclaims to me, with our skill, there is no way we don't find a fish today. And I loved his confidence, and I wondered if he knew how utterly nervous it makes me to fish around him. How bad of a caster I actually am, and how being when fishing with him is really more terrifying than fun most days. And then it made me wonder how many times I've made a similar statement of confidence to a newer forecaster, a newer avalanche professional, where maybe in my attempt to give them some sort of stability and encouragement, instead I've made them feel super insecure because I'm acting like I'm all confident. I've wondered how many times I presented myself to the public and made them wonder how somebody can think so strongly about snow rather than demonstrating my insecurity, my uncertainty. It's made me really think about how I behave and present myself to these people, to my colleagues, to my staff, to the people in our community in the Northwest. See, nobody has it figured out. Nobody, not even the people who've been doing this for decades and decades and decades, have this thing figured out. We all feel like imposters at some point. And saying anything otherwise is just being the imposter. So how do we grow in this environment? Well, number one, we need to seek out input. I found a group of people that I can go to and I can ask questions without feeling like I'm being judged. And having those folks in my back pocket to actually help me learn and grow has really changed how I'm developing as a steelheader. See, sometimes my casts, they look like perfect arrows, and other times they end up in a pile in the middle of the river. And some of my flies look like works of art, and others look like a kindergartner's craft project. And these people can give me feedback on these things and help me refine and grow and change. Oftentimes, we're typically, as outdoor professionals, a rather independent bunch. And one of the biggest things I've learned is to let others help me along my way. Whether that's friends, colleagues, mentors. Lynn brought up many of her mentors earlier. And I think back to all those people who have been built into me and how much they've changed what I do. But you also have to get out there and do it. See, you can take every class, you can attend every professional development workshop. We can talk for hours about snow grain ID. But at some point, you gotta grab the crystal card in your loop and go stare at snow grains. At some point, I've gotta stop watching the YouTube video and I gotta get out in the river and start casting. Because that's the only way to actually get better at this thing is to go do it. That leads me to my third lesson from 1,000 casts. How do we deal with this environment where we don't get very much feedback? This is one that's really near and dear to my heart as a public forecaster. See, me and my staff, we struggle with this one every single day. It is very rare that we get enough good information that I feel like I can say much of anything verifying my avalanche forecast. And we're all pretty familiar with this as avalanche professionals, right? We know you can go out there, you can do everything wrong and not trigger an avalanche. You can go back from a day out in the mountains and nothing has happened, and you're left wondering, Did I do it right or was I lucky? Lynn presented it earlier. Was I good or was I lucky? And we don't know. I go out and I fish. I get no fish. I see no avalanches. Was I right? Was I wrong? I have no idea. Oftentimes, in the avalanche world, we wrap this lack of feedback thing into the idea of uncertainty and how we see the things that we don't know. And trying to wrestle with this idea of learning amidst all this lack of feedback and uncertainty has caused me to really refine and reinforce some of the things that I do in this broken feedback loop system that we all work. I skipped a whole part of my talk, but that's okay. Steelheading is a really weird beast. They're called the fish of 1,000 casts. So you can go, in fact, if I go fishing later today, I would expect I don't catch a fish. And I can fish bell to bell for hours and not even get a nibble. I reached out to that group of people that I reach out to all the time for input, and one of the things they told me, I said, what's your longest span without a fish? 15 people responded. 2 to 3 years without bringing a winter steelhead to hand. See, steelheading is not a numbers game, all right? All the fly fishing guides in here right now are like, what? Yeah, 2 to 3 years without bringing a fish to hand. This is a really, really crazy place. So how do we deal with this broken feedback loop? 3 things really stick out to me. Number 1, it's caused me to really lean in to my process and to really trust what I do on a daily basis. See, I have a process that I do before I go to the mountains for work or play, doesn't matter. I do it every single day if I'm going to go to the mountains. And I write it down in a field book, and I have stacks of these things in my house that my wife would love to throw away. And so we have this process that we've refined, and I have my forecasting process, and we really want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. I'm systematically walking through information. We also focus a lot on uncertainty, and rightfully so. We need to build in margins for uncertainty. But sometimes we get wrapped around that axle of uncertainty where we don't always necessarily help ourselves. And I love to ask myself, I love to ask my team the question, what do you know? Well, I know it's March. I know fish are in the river. I know this fly has caught fish before. I know it snowed 6 inches last night. I know the wind blew. I can hang my hat on that today. Lastly, we need to take the opportunity to magnify lessons. And that's a lot of what we're doing here today, right? We're taking the opportunity for these little granules of feedback that we get, whether positive or negative, and we're trying to make sure we don't miss the opportunity to learn. See, it's really hard for me to separate myself from the snow and avalanches. Even when I'm standing waist deep in a river, I'm thinking about the mountains looming above my head. But all this time swinging flies for these crazy fish has really given me an opportunity to rethink and reshape how I approach this whole snow, weather, and avalanche thing. It's caused me to re-envision how I present myself and expectations to students in education. It's caused me to think about how I present my bravado, my confidence, or divulge my insecurities and uncertainty to my fellow professionals and to our public. And it's caused me to really rethink and reinforce the things I use to learn and develop in a system where I get nearly no feedback, trusting in my process, thinking about what I do know, and making sure I capitalize on those few moments of feedback. See, I'm by no means a good steelhead angler. I'm not even sure I'm a good avalanche forecaster. But what I can tell you is that I really love the fact that science and art and luck are weaving through these 2 things, and this gives me an opportunity to work on being a better artist and a lot less lucky. Thanks so much.